Welcome to Trimet 101. Today I'm going to be talking about something some of you may know about, some of you may not. Forward Together 2.0. No, these are not my ideas. So many of you are going to already know about Forward Together. It's what we're in the midst of right now. It's the reason why the Markham Hill routes don't exist anymore and instead have all-day replacements from the 43 and the 56. Or other things that I'm not thinking of off the top of my head, but we're in the middle of Forward Together. This was sort of just an immediate future. This is Forward Together 1.0. It's an upgrade, and it is Trimet focusing on building ridership rather than just restoring service to pre-pandemic routes. Trimet is focusing on restoring ridership and trying to get more people to use it. And so some things may seem kind of confusing or counterintuitive, but with the Google Maps tab open and with a little line of logic and understanding of why they chose what they did, well, you can see what they've done. I don't agree with everything, and I'm going to talk about that here, but that is now considered Forward Together 1.0. Because a plan came out back in September, yes, I've been needing to do this video since September, that highlights something we had never seen before and will very likely get updated in the future. Forward Together 2.0. Forward Together 1.0 that we're in the middle of right now was, like I said, an immediate future sort of thing, and it should take only a few years before it's all implemented. Forward Together 2.0 is more of a long-range look into the future, which also includes some important max projects that need to happen, but it also includes a ton of other weird stuff, which I'll talk about. Forward Together 2.0 has, well, a lot to it. It has a lot of Trimet routes that are going to be included here, including max extensions and things, which I'll talk about. But it also has other shuttles and routes that would be non-Trimet, but are also included on this map, meaning all of the companies would be working together. Things like Clackamas Connects, Ride Connection, maybe Eco Shuttle, or Eco Shuttle and Multnomah County partnering together. I'm not sure exactly how that would work. And maybe other things that don't currently exist. But they're all on this one map. And it's incredible to see all the things that they've done. I haven't shown you the map yet because I'm going to completely blow your mind away if you haven't seen this already. I'm going to link it down in the description. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to link this or not, but it is technically a public document, although I have no idea where my friend actually found this. It was sort of passed down from one person to the next, and I'm going to be sharing it for you in the description. It is a PowerPoint, and if you scroll down a couple of pages, you will get this map, which is truly insane. This map is completely chock full of everything imaginable. Basically, tying everything together and just making the grid denser. Even in Southeast Portland, the grid is denser. There's going to be a bus on Stark or Market and Main Streets and all of that through the Rockwood areas, and it's pretty insane. But let's talk about the max. The max has been upgraded. The blue and red lines don't change at all. But there are some very weird things. The Southwest Corridor is on here. It's officially on this document. And everything on this is supposed to be done by 2045. That's the general idea here. And what you're seeing is a draft, but the Southwest Corridor light rail is on here. But you'll notice it's actually yellow, not green or purple as some previous plans were showing. This actually caught me by surprise, but it means that the yellow line will actually through run to the Southwest Corridor rather than turning into an orange to Milwaukee as we see today. And that is quite interesting in my opinion. And then the green lines coming into downtown Portland will then be the ones through running and turning into an orange line to Milwaukee. A little weird and unconventional, but I guess it works. And now I'd like to turn your attention over to PDX. What is this weird color? Why is there a red line and a teal line serving the airport? Well, that would be for one simple reason. a new MAX line would be formed and would serve exactly 0 new stations. It would be a crosstown MAX, something that probably should have existed quite a while ago, and would go between Portland Airport and Clackamas Town Center Transit Center, serving Red Line and Green Line stops. And it's officially called on this map the Teal Line. Interesting. And if we zoom in on the frequency table here, you'll see that a lot of the MAX lines are now running at double the frequency. Now, you may be confused, why 7.5 minute frequency? What does that mean? Well, that doesn't mean 7 minutes and 30 seconds. What it means is there will be a train, and then 7 minutes later there will be a train, and then 8 minutes later is the next one, and then 7 minutes, and then 8 minutes, 7 minutes, and 8 minutes, because it's exactly double of today's 15-minute frequent service. But 15 doesn't divide by 2, and so you have to do it like that, but it averages to 7.5 minutes. And a lot of the lines here just generally will be running at that frequency. And it means that nowhere on the entire MAX system would get trains any less frequently than every 7.5 minutes. That's incredible. This is very much a pipe dream, and is very, very cool to see on this map. However, if I'm being honest with you, I have no idea how or where Trimet is going to get the space to have that many trains on the system, because that's essentially doubling what we see today on the system. So we're going to need a lot of trains running on... I don't know where that's all going to come from. Now, one of the other projects I got to talk about before I start talking about yards, I never really fully wrote a script for this, so it's kind of a mess, but the MAX Yellow Line. It doesn't just do the Southwest Corridor. Look further north. It has the downtown Vancouver extension as well, which is very cool to see. And as part of that project, there are some overnight storage tracks built in. I made an entire video talking about the Interstate Bridge replacement, which you should definitely go watch. I'll put a card there if you'd like to see it, because I'll go in way more detail on that video. I'm just going to kind of gloss over it here. But yeah, there were some overnight storage tracks there. That's not very much. The Southwest Corridor project will have another yard at the Hall Boulevard station. That's fine, but it's going to be a small yard. El Monica has absolutely no room to expand unless you want to, like, cross over Jenkins Road or something and tear down all those buildings. You can't go where the power lines are. You maybe could take over today's Park and Ride, but there are townhouses over there. You can expand Ruby Junction, which is already the largest yard and has quite a large footprint. So we may have to build another yard somewhere somehow, even though good luck with that. So I don't know where all these trains are going to be stored, but it is very cool to see that it is officially in a plan for 2045. For the rest of this video, I'm just going to generally talk about what I see being good improvements to the Portland region and for Forward Together. I guess you could call this Forward Together 2.101. I really like seeing this frequency increase for the MAX, and I cannot wait to see it, hopefully at least during the rush hour, having trains that frequently. However, there are a couple of other MAX things that I would like to talk about that I'm surprised aren't mentioned or shown anywhere on here. What does Seattle's light rail have in downtown that Portland's doesn't? I'll give you a quick answer. It looks like this. This is an actual video of Seattle's Link trains. Notice the spectacular view of gray walls? The train goes underground. Where is the downtown tunnel? Do we not want that built by 2045? I want that built, like, well, now. It should have been built 4 decades ago. We need it now. It's terrible. The MAX is so slow through downtown. It's almost painful sometimes when you're trying to go home, and then you wonder why people drive because it's faster or whatever. Yeah, the train is a heck of a lot less stressful than, you know, sitting in bumper-to-bumper traffic just trying to get home. It's a lot more consistent when you're on a train that's constantly flying by all the traffic, and then you get to downtown Portland and you're stuck going 10, 15 miles an hour and stopping every few blocks. It's not good. Where is the tunnel in this plan? And also, let's talk about Oregon City. There's no Max to Oregon City, so there's a lot of bus service to Oregon City, which is great to see, but the Max Orange Line just kind of ends. It ends in the middle of nowhere on a corridor, McLaughlin Boulevard, that is quite busy and very, very conveniently very straight all the way to Oregon City. The Max Orange Line can very, very easily extend from the Park Avenue station to Oregon City Transit Center. Same thing with the Green Line. The I-205 corridor kind of swings in and could very easily go and connect with the Orange Line somewhere near Oregon City, and so if you wanted to go from Clackamas to Oregon City Transit Center, you wouldn't have to hop on a bus, you could just get on the Green or the Orange Line. These buses should still exist, like the 31 and the 79 or whatever that goes between them, because the point of the routes isn't that they connect from Clackamas to Oregon City. They also run a top 82nd Drive or Webster Road to get to those destinations. So you're serving more with the buses, but the Max would be faster. And as a person that has taken the 31 and the 79 a few times, I find myself riding the route from end to end and seeing that a lot of passengers do the same thing. They go from end to end. So having a quick light rail connection that connects between those two, whether it's Milwaukee to Oregon City or Clackamas to Oregon City, makes a lot of sense to me. You could even have these Green Line extension trains, you know, with this whole Clackamas to Oregon City thing. You could have it go through Gladstone as well. You know, something to look into. This might be a little more insane, and I might talk about this later, but I'm going to talk about a big dig. Something for the Max Orange Line, and saying that both the yellow and orange lines would go into Vancouver, but with a branch. And so the yellow line could continue to go on the I-5 corridor and serve the waterfront and then Evergreen Boulevard, and then maybe eventually extending out to, I don't know, Vancouver Mall, or maybe more so on the I-5 corridor to 99th Street Transit Center. I think that would be worth doing, but if nothing else, having a branch where the Max Orange Line would also go into Vancouver, but would instead go out west and would go over to the Vancouver Amtrak station. There's not really good service out to there, and it's a pretty industrial area, and I think it would be a pretty decent trip generator. Now I'm going to talk about the streetcar. Portland Streetcar. I know this map doesn't really get into the streetcar very much, and it doesn't really... It's not part of Trimet. Trimet operates and maintains the vehicles, but Portland Streetcar, the city of Portland, and all of them would have to be the ones doing the planning for all of this. But I see so much potential for expanding the streetcar system to something that's a little more usable, that it would not make sense to not do it. It's something that we should do. Having lots of east-west routes that actually serve a purpose and aren't just circulator type routes, I think make a lot of sense. Having the streetcar take over some of the frequent service routes that go east-west through downtown makes sense to me. Basically having all of the bridges that cross the Willamette River also having streetcar service across them makes sense in my mind. I feel like a broken record. But I'd also like to mention that if the Max tracks were to go underground, if they were to be submerged, well, then there would be some street level tracks that just wouldn't be used anymore. Don't rip those up. You can reuse those as part of the streetcar. And that way the steel bridge would have streetcars of its own, which would be from the old Max tracks. And also our little baby vehicles that are basically the length of an articulated bus and have way fewer seats and just can't carry as many riders, well, yeah, that needs to be improved. If our streetcar system were to eventually be upgraded and actually had full-length light rail vehicles, even though it would just be one light rail vehicle rather than two or multiple hooked together, if the tunnel ever gets built for the Max where you could actually hook longer trains together, well, that would actually hold more passengers. There would be 4 doors per train rather than 2.5, because you got that little door on the front end. But it would hold so many more riders. I imagine they would be a little more comfortable, and just, makes more sense. Having higher frequency, maybe they would run every 10 minutes. Something that's a little more useful. And something a little faster. If we could get traffic signal priority for the streetcars to where it actually gets them moving at a reasonable speed, well, that'd be great. Because as it stands now, it's basically just, mostly in my mind, it's the equivalent of one of those moving walkways in an airport. It's kind of just one of those. Let me tie a little bit of what I was saying earlier back into this. Interstate Avenue. Interstate Avenue could also be a streetcar line. Now, the way this would work is by taking over the existing Max tracks to probably Lombard or Kenton, and that'd be it. And then the Max Yellow line, and as I said earlier, the Orange line, would then be built with probably an insane project, but this little big dig for I-5 that I have come up with, which would have to also probably be a City of Portland thing as it's dealing with I-5, but basically tunneling under I-5 to build the Max, and that way the Max is faster, and you still retain street-level tracks on Interstate Avenue, and so you could have the more local service corridor through there. Here's another thing I forgot to mention that is on this mega map. FX. There are 2 more routes on here that say FX. You of course have FX2 on Division, but take a look at 82nd Avenue. It has the FX thing on it. Now, I have my own thoughts on all of that I'm going to explain in detail in part 2. Let's look at TV Highway, another corridor that was being studied, and there you go, FX, right on TV Highway all the way to Forest Grove. Really happy to see that that is also included on here and should be built well before 2045. In fact, before this decade is over, the transit line on 82nd Avenue is supposed to be operating. We're going to see if that's true or not, but it is a thing. There are 2 other corridors I'd like to talk about because I haven't fully made up my mind on what to do with these yet. And the first one is line 20. Burnside was supposed to get an FX route, or at least it was feasibility studies. It was just one of the future studies that Trimet was looking into. And the McLaughlin corridor. Again, same deal. Now, the only issue is Burnside exists, and I just said earlier that I think streetcars would be great going through the east-west corridors. Burnside is absolutely one of those corridors that I would mess with and put streetcars over the Burnside Bridge and call it a day. Although you probably couldn't build that in a day. But at the same time, my streetcar routes, I had one that would go Burnside and then go up Sandy Boulevard, so it wouldn't take over much of the 20. It would just be sort of a complement to the 20, and it would go through downtown. So you could still have FX here and just have FX and streetcar stops. You could probably make that work. Not really sure how you would do it. You could just have long platforms that would be sort of like the ones at South Waterfront that could serve the streetcar and, well, I guess South Waterfront doesn't really serve the streetcar, but, you know, where they would both be combined in one long platform. I don't know, you could figure all that out. But here's the weird one, the McLaughlin corridor with line 33, although actually, if you look on this map, the 33 actually is all weird. They have it going on King Road, like today's 33, and doing line 155 to Sunnyside and 172nd. And so that would all be 33, King and Sunnyside. And the McLaughlin corridor is an extension of line 75. But whatever number you choose for this, I'm not sure FX is the right fit. Had we thought differently a decade or more ago about this whole Portland to Milwaukee light rail, I think maybe a feasible option would have also been to do BRT through here and have our first FX line on McLaughlin from downtown Portland to Oregon City and Clackamas Community College. That way, you know, because the Max Orange line doesn't have very high ridership compared to the other lines, it maybe would have been fine as an FX corridor, but it wasn't built like that. And so I think the more busy portion of this corridor is between Milwaukee and Oregon City, and so building FX here seems backwards. You've already got the Max Orange line serving a portion of it. I wouldn't think it makes sense to have a continuation of the Orange line to Oregon City and CCC as a bus. To me, that makes more sense as the Orange line. Last thing about FX, I don't know if FX would be the right fit here, but it seems to me as though the airport could use with some sort of connection. So having a bus line from the airport all the way down maybe Columbia Boulevard to either North Portland or maybe through to St. John's seems like an important link that's not really made on any of these maps. Yes, you do have a bus on Columbia Boulevard, the 49, that's going to exist at some point through Forward Together, but it doesn't, to me, seem... It's not high capacity, even though it connects with such major destinations, and it wouldn't be express in any sort of way, so I don't know if FX would be the right fit here, but I thought I would bring it up. Now let's talk about the WES. Service needs to return to normal levels. If it ran every 30 minutes, that would be great. And honestly, Portland and Western, if you would let the WES actually operate all day and be an actual useful train, well, it would be very much more useful and attract more riders. If it ran every 30 minutes during the rush and every hour off-peak, I would see this being a big-time success. The WES also definitely needs to be extended to Salem, because it just makes so much sense. The trackway already exists. The Kaiser Transit Center is right off of the tracks. Downtown Salem, it would serve the waterfront area of Salem. It wouldn't really go to the downtown transit center, but it's a short walk. I've walked it. It's not that bad. And if you wanted to, you could have a little spur, like how it goes into Beaverton Transit Center with its own dedicated trackway that freight doesn't use. You could build one of those to Downtown Transit Center if you wanted to, but I don't think it would be absolutely necessary to do if you wanted to cheapen out the project and try and get costs down. I'm sure serving a station called Salem Waterfront or something would be just fine. But who says the WES needs to just be one line? TV Highway has tracks too, and they're used a few times a day by freight. And yet, the TV Highway corridor, both by cars and bus travel, is very busy and very congested. So, why not have a little express route? The E in WES stands for express anyways. So you could have the FX line operating and then a WES line going from maybe Beaverton Transit Center all the way to Forest Grove, providing a fast east-west connection through the west side. There's also a trackway from Tualatin area all the way to McMinnville, like Tigard Tualatin area, all the way to McMinnville. That could be pretty easy to implement as well. The McMinnville Transit Center is right off of these tracks, and so I see that as a win too. And more generic regional rail lines could operate to other cities and destinations as well, operating sort of like the Sounder train does in the Seattle area, where it runs along the Amtrak corridor, but it serves a little bit more local stops. There are stops that would only be serviced by the regional rail and wouldn't be serviced by Amtrak. Amtrak stations through this corridor wouldn't change at all. You could have another connection to Salem that actually goes from Portland Union Station to Salem with additional stops for these regional rail trains. You could go the complete other direction and toward the coast and have trains to Astoria, or you could go out east to a very popular destination, the Columbia River Gorge and Multnomah Falls. Call it the Multnomah Falls Express. And bus. I'm pretty much going to leave you on a cliffhanger with bus, because I'm going to extensively talk about it in part 2 next week. But there are a lot of improvements that are being made that I really like to see, and there are others that I don't fully understand. And so I'm going to talk about those next time, and you'll just have to see what those are all about. But yes, be smart with the grid, as they've been doing here, being very smart with adding things and shuffling routes around to be more direct and cutting miles off of trips, because The shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line after all. So doing things like that. And just in general densifying the grid and actually understanding that population is increasing in certain areas, and so having more transit service through these corridors makes sense. Amazon warehouses seem to be getting built every 2 hours, and lots of just heavy industrial areas that really don't have good transit right now will eventually. And so I'm very excited to see that. But also express. You guys are getting rid of express routes. Maybe it's time to pull a Seattle, or maybe more generally a Puget Sound, and operate something kind of like Sound Transit. More point-to-point destinations that use the full network of our freeway and highway systems to quickly connect destinations to other destinations. You know, there are two different kinds of express routes. You have the highway and regional routes like that, where it goes from, say, downtown Portland to Washington Square or something, and just uses all the highway system. That's one type of express route. And then you also have ones like, line 14 and 14E, where it's the same route. It goes on Hawthorne Boulevard, but the 14E doesn't serve any stops from the Hawthorne Bridge all the way to Cesar Chavez Boulevard. You have stuff like that too. It doesn't use any freeways or anything, but it serves less stops and shaves off a few minutes of the route. Both of these we need. But join me in part 2 next week, where I'm going to discuss these in much greater detail. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.